I'm Jody Burnett,
And I'm Jennifer Southall.
and we're priests and pastors at St. Peter's Episcopal Church in Oxford, Mississippi.
Our goal with this podcast is to lift up voices from within our community and from around the wider church, and to feature stories of joy, hope, and encouragement for your journey of faith.
We are delighted to welcome you to On This Rock for the building up of the church. We pray this episode will be a blessing to our listeners. Welcome back to On This Rock for the building up of the church, the St. Peter's podcast. This is episode number 7, and we are wrapping up for the semester. We're going to take a break for the summer, but we'll be coming back in the fall with a new season. This has been really a joy over the last several months to start this podcast and to interact with some of our parishioners and get to know our folks better and lift up voices of the faithful from St. Peter's. And today it is our great joy and delight to have with us as our guest Shaun Helmhout, who in fact was in church this morning back in person in the nave with her husband Ron for the first time in quite some time, though they hosted many of our neighborhood outdoor gatherings and have certainly been with us remotely and at the pavilion and in other ways. But Shaun, it sure was good to see y'all in church this morning. Would love for you, before we kind of jump into our conversation, to just introduce yourself for our listeners so that they can have a chance to get to know you, who you are, how long you've been in Oxford. Tell us a little bit about your work, your family, any sort of autobiographical details that you would like to share. We would love to hear them.
Okay. I started working in Oxford in 2005. I grew up in Memphis, where I attended St. Mary's Episcopal School. Every morning we started with chapel, wearing little white chapel caps, and it became a very peaceful thing for me to have that time every morning where we would sing a raucous hymn and the organist would just really just put it out there, and we would leave with happiness and joy, and it was just a great way to start your day. And I realized attending that school that I was Episcopalian because I just believed everything that my thinking was very much in tune with what I knew about the Episcopal Church. Grew up there, met Ron, who is my high school sweetheart. We started dating when we worked at the country club as lifeguards. And so went off to college and attended the University of Tennessee. And once we graduated in Knoxville, because that's what you did then, they didn't have all these crossovers. You just went to your state school and attended UT, graduated, and was ready to get married and play house with Ron, and really was kind of done with school. I majored in biology and Spanish, and got a job out of college with a company called Buckman Laboratories, and had a wonderful career at Buckman. I worked there for 5 years. I worked my way up to a managerial position. While I was there, they paid for me to complete my master's degree in environmental toxicology. And once I finished my master's, it was just a point where I had to decide, do I want to get a PhD, or do I want to pursue this med school thing that had always sort of been in the back of my mind? And so I studied for the MCAT, and I went and took it, and I did well on the MCAT. And University of Tennessee sent me an acceptance letter, and I went to the management at Buckman, and I said, bye, I'm going to medical school. And they said, well, wait. Don't you need to train your replacement? And I said, well, that's a great idea, but I'm out of here. I'm going to medical school. And they said, if you'll stay on another year, train your replacement, we'll pay for your med school. It was the most generous gift anybody's ever given me in my whole life. And so that's what we did. I stayed a year. I got pregnant with Wilson and had her. And starting my first year of med school, I had a toddler and a new career that I was headed into that I was scared to death about, because I knew that I'd given everything up and failure was not an option. Ron had actually quit his job and gone back and gotten his MBA through all of this. And so when I started medical school, I just failure was not an option. I absolutely had to be successful. Going into it, I thought I would probably do allergy and immunology. I'd worked in an immunology lab in college and I really loved it. But when I got to my rotations, I did a rotation with Dr. Blaze, who's a world famous allergy immunologist. And as we were going around seeing patients, I just noticed he ordered the exact same tests and he asked the exact same questions. He wrote the exact same prescriptions and then he went to the next room and he did all of that over again. And I thought, I can't do this. This would make me crazy. And that's when I found family medicine, because you never know what's behind door number 3. It could be anything from a little kid with, fifth disease to a 90-year-old in heart failure. There was such a wide berth of information that was needed. And I always laughed and said, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, which is probably pretty true about what I do. But it gives me a chance to do a lot of different things and help a lot of different people at a lot of different points in their lives. I remember working one Saturday and this little couple came in with their young child and they were just frightened to death. And the baby had these red cheeks and, he was just so sick. And I was like, did some blood work. I was like, you're fine. The baby's fine. Just a little virus. And these young parents literally started crying when I reassured them their baby didn't have meningitis or some horrible disease. And so, I told them, I remember having little kids and how frightening it was when they got sick and how I felt like I had done something wrong or been a failure or hadn't served my child in the way I was supposed to. And you guys are perfect. You're great parents. And this little baby's just fine. And you just never know where you're going to be and what place they are in their lives. And when you brought up the compassion, that's kind of what I thought about. Was compassion to me is about putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to understand what is the driving forces for them right now. What are their fears? What are their anxieties? What are the positive things in their lives that you can, push them towards and say, hey, you've got these scary things, but you've got these really positive things. I guess looking at the half full glass type philosophy is always so helpful when you're trying to show someone that you care about them. Bringing back the good stuff instead of focusing on the negative stuff, I think really propels a relationship in a way that makes people feel like they're heard and makes them feel like they're cared about. The one thing that I've loved about being in Oxford are the connections here. Once I start connecting people up, oh, that's your grandma, oh, that's your aunt, and once those connections get made, it's like, now I completely understand, why you were so upset that you had a blister on your toe because grandpa just had his leg cut off for diabetes. I mean, all of a sudden things make sense to me as to why you're making such a big deal about this little blister on your toe, because you just watched someone you care about lose a lower extremity to the effects of diabetes. So connecting dots has been the funnest part to me of moving to Oxford. And the most fun part about taking care of my patients is I get to take care of everybody. And that was the other part of family medicine that really drew me, was that I do get to take care of the whole family. It's not just, I only take care of your heart failure and I only take care of your tonsillitis. I get to do everything for everybody, and I get to hold them all in my arms, and I get to understand where they're coming from, where they're headed. We can never forget, we always have to understand where a person is at any point in time and sort of take them at that place. Yesterday, Ron and I, and this occurred to me, Ron and I were talking about a friend of ours who's gotten a cancer diagnosis, and it's not good. And we were both concerned and worried and speaking to each other in worried tones. And someone opened the door for us to this retail store we were walking into. And we were just so involved with each other and what we were talking about. And she looked at us and she goes, "You're welcome." And when we walked past, I go, "Oh, thank you." I just hadn't even, I was so involved in another thought that it didn't even occur to me that human politeness still applies. I should have told her thank you. But on the other hand, maybe she should have thought about, well, maybe those two people just heard that their good friend has cancer and is probably not going to live very long. And so I think it's that milk of human kindness, always giving somebody a bye when they have a bad day, will take you a long, long way, and not take it personally. Most of the time it's not meant that way. I deal with people every day that I have to tell them sad things or bad things. And when I have to go in the room and have that conversation, circling back to before, I always want to have the upside to everything. The upside is we have a plan. I've already got you an appointment with the oncologist and you're already set up to go see him. And then you've got this appointment with the surgeon. And so we've got this plan all laid out for you because, it helps people to know what the next step is going to be. It makes it less scary when you know where you're going and what the next steps are going to be. And I always tell them, I will be here with you. And oh, by the way, here's my cell phone number. And if you have any questions, because I know you only heard every third word that I just said to you, just call me back. It's not a big deal. And my nurse teases me and says, "You've got to stop giving the entire city of Oxford your cell phone number. You just got to stop." And I'm like, "Why? Why do I have to stop?" She said, "Because they need to go through the proper channels. They need to talk to me. They need to leave a message. They need to do this." And I'm like, they've already all got it. I mean, what else am I going to do? So I don't know. I think I've gotten off topic here.
No, you're good. And actually, there are two things I want to kind of lift up. One, and it's interesting, I think we always, when we get to know somebody, we assume things. And I certainly just assumed, Shaun, that you went straight from high school to college, straight from college to med school, straight from med school to, to family practice. But your vocational route was slightly more circuitous. And what an incredible thing that your previous employer, Buckman Labs, offered to fund your medical school education. That's an amazing example of generosity. And I have to imagine that set a tone for you in your work, as I have observed you in your practice of medicine. You are very generous with your time, as you've already noted jokingly about handing out your cell phone to anybody who needs it. And you've always responded to my text, and I appreciate that. But surely that set a tone for you. And I just, thanks be to God for that. But also, and you mentioned it already, and this, I want to kind of get into our theme a little bit now more explicitly. You named it before I could: compassion. And we looked at, Jennifer sent us some scripture references, which were really helpful, and all of them related to Jesus, stories about Jesus himself interacting with people, having compassion for them. And what stood out to me, especially as it relates to your work, as I have observed it, Shaun, when Scripture tells us, when the gospel authors tell us that Jesus sees someone and has compassion for them, what I read into that is that he really recognizes their need, their situation, their emotional state, what they're feeling, what they're going through from the top to the bottom. And that has to characterize in some way your spiritual state, when you enter into a room. So how do you understand the theme of compassion, as it's presented to us in Scripture, as it relates to your faith? How does that kind of factor into your work, your practice of medicine?
So I did think those were some really nice verses. And when I read them about Jesus, healing and lifting from the dead, even, my take on it was he looked at these individuals, and not necessarily the sick individuals, not necessarily the dying individuals, but the people around them, and more took compassion on them than he did the sick person, the mother with the only child who had died. He was more in tune with her than he was with this person that was dead. And that sort of made me think about the hospice work I do, more than necessarily the medical practice, although that too. But hospice is about the living and the dying, but providing the most quality of time you can for those two people to interact with each other, providing most comfort for the dying, and providing the most support for the caregivers. It's a very delicate thing to be with people, but also very rewarding. And what a gift to be allowed to be with people during these most difficult period of their life, and to be that support for them, to know that you're there for them. It really has been great for me to take care of not just the sick, but the people around the sick who are also affected by that illness. And that's what family medicine does too. I may be taking care of grandpa in hospice, but I see his wife and his kids and his nieces and nephews, and they come in and they even say to me, gosh, your hospice is doing such a great job with grandpa. We're so grateful to have you all there. And that's my chance to say, well, how are you doing? I mean, are you good? Are you guys handling things okay? And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. But just the fact that I asked always seems to mean a lot to people.
I love that you take such a communal approach to healthcare and to the practice of medicine. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention your work at the North Mississippi Regional Center, which I think is also a very communally based organization. Would you talk just a little bit about your experiences there and your work there and that community?
Absolutely. The North Mississippi Regional Center is a long-term care facility for intellectually and physically disabled individuals. I originally started working out there when Dr. Eric Dahl was medical director, and he was kind of fishing around for who was going to be his replacement, basically. And I just would work out there 1 or 2 days a month, but I really got to know the clients, and I came to understand what a unique place this was. I also came to understand that it's not anyone else's job to judge whether or not you have a good life. And that's probably been the most frustrating thing for me in taking care of these folks, is when they end up in the hospital, I feel like they get a little dismissed because they're in a wheelchair, or they're nonverbal, or they're blind, or whatever reason. And that people who have a fully complete body feel like those who don't have those things are less valuable, less worth their efforts. And to me, these people didn't ask to be like this. They were born onto this earth. They're human beings. They're human lives. They deserve the same love, compassion, empathy that anyone else would receive. And I see that the caregivers at NMRC do provide that for these folks. And they honestly have very full, complete, and happy lives. They've never known anything different than what they live. And therefore, to them, this is great. It's a great life. And they look forward to pizza night. And they look forward to the DJ being on campus, just like anybody else has events that they look forward to. So I don't know. I told Dr. Dahl, and I told Ron when I took this job, I knew it was going to be a lot of work. But I told them, I said, NMRC is a little bit my happy place, because I see those who have disabilities and yet are happy and feel fulfilled and feel complete, even though you or I might look at them and find them incomplete. And so it's really taught me to never judge anyone based on my personal lack of limits. Everybody can really be happy where they can bloom where they're planted. They can be happy where they stand. And these folks are such a beautiful example of that to me, that it means a lot to me to be their advocate, to be there for them and to fight for them and make sure they do receive the care that they deserve, the love that they deserve, the pizza that they deserve. I mean, I'm going to fight for these folks. And it's a huge employer. NMRC, there's over 2,000 jobs run. Now, it's not all in Oxford, but it's a huge employer, over 2,000 jobs that run out of that administrative bubble there. And I think that sometimes people forget how important this is to this campus is to our community, and the excellent jobs it provides. They have insurance, they have benefits, they have a pension. So there's a lot that Oxford's really lucky to have a facility like this located here. But the facility is lucky too. I mean, we draw from the university, the psychology department. We hire a lot from that group to help us with maintaining and managing the clients. And so it's just a very symbiotic thing for Oxford and NMRC to be together. And I always want this community to respect the people that work there and the work they do there, because it's important, and it's compassion. Everyone that works at NMRC is very compassionate to be willing to take that type of job and care for, these types of people who are so dependent on their caregivers.
If you had to summarize, Shaun, in a sentence or two or three, what the last year and a half has taught you, in terms of your work, in terms of your faith. We talked earlier before we started recording about how good it is to be back in church, about how hopeful we are for the future. We are sort of on a threshold moment as we look back on the time that we have been through and look ahead to brighter times. Where are you, spiritually speaking, professionally speaking? How would you sort of summarize what you've learned, how you feel right now, what your attitude is going forward?
Yeah, I thought about that. God has put me through many trials, personal trials, my own health crises. And there have been times where I've just thought, why have you forsaken me? And honestly, this year, there were several times where I felt very forsaken by my God. And I wondered where he was and how he could let these innocent people die. I don't know if y'all know Coach James, but he was a well-loved Lafayette High School coach that I also loved. And he just got sick and didn't even realize what was going on. His wife did a wonderful job of speaking for him. I saw her on CNN talking about how, you've got to get vaccinated, pay attention to this, wear your masks. And I've been, in the beginning, I was angry about the selfishness of people who refuse to wear their masks, refuse to comply with, rules and requests by the government. And I just felt angry with them for not doing their part. So there were some crises for me. Absolutely. I remember one night, somebody put a sign in my yard and it said, "A hero lives here." And Ron and I were out in the driveway. I'm trying to cry about this. And somebody drives by and sees us in the driveway and screams, "We love you, Dr. Helmhout." And I absolutely broke into tears. It was like, wow, that meant everything, that, how do you even know that I'm standing here hurting like this to come by? And so it's those moments where I'm like, all right, you really are here. You haven't really, really left me. You see me when I'm in my greatest need, and you put a hand down and you pull me out of the hole, and I can go back to work tomorrow because I feel so grateful that somebody gave a damn, recognized the pain that I was in and the difficulty I was in. It meant everything. I still don't know who that was, but I sure needed it.
It was Jennifer. We do absolutely love you, 100%. And so often I think that those who are on the front lines of care, medical care, spiritual care, any sort of caregiver, especially during really intense times like the last year and a half, it's so easy to sort of forget. It's easy to forget your own needs,
Right.
and it's easy for those of us who are not kind of in that intensity to forget the needs of those who are. So I think that was a blessing, and perhaps God working, the Spirit moving through another person, human person, to give you that sign of grace that you needed. And what an incredible thing that was. So
It really was. And it helped me. I mean, it helped me. And I was like, okay, you haven't really forsaken me. You're just testing me now. and I'm up for it. I can do this. But I did miss church through all of this. I think I miss my friends, and I'm so happy about the opportunity to get back together with them. And I miss my church life, and I'm so excited about the new building. And I loved Duncan's sermon today because he's right. I mean, we have all these new opportunities that maybe this slate that's been wiped clean, everybody deserves a clean slate. And maybe this is what God's giving us through this is a chance to be better than we were, to be better people than we were before, to be better human beings, to be better to the earth, to appreciate all those things that got taken away from us for a year. Now they just have so much more. Going to church is just mundane. I was like, okay, well, all right, just go to church, And today it was like, we're going to church. I'm going to put on a nice dress and pearls, and I'm going to go see my friends, and I'm going to be so excited about this. So it really may give all of us a new appreciation of all those things that got taken away from us for that year. Maybe we needed to be reminded how lucky we are and how easy we have it and how grateful we need to be for all the good things in our lives.
Well, we were probably near the end of our time, but Shaun, again, we are so grateful for your willingness to come on and talk with us about your work, and particularly about the ministry of compassion, which is such a major feature of your work. And so I want to just say thank you for what you do. We're glad to have you at St. Peter's, you and Ron both. And just for those who are listening, your mom, Mary Margaret Laughlin, is also very much around as a member of St. Peter's. And Ron's mom, just as recently, is also in Oxford. Evelyn Helmhout is her name, and she is living at the Blake. I know she'll at the very least be on our visitation list for home communion, and will probably be involved in other ways too. But we've got your whole family, really. And do you want to just say a brief word, because I know you've got big news? Your daughter Wilson. Do you want to share that news and say a word about Ted? And that can be kind of our parting exchange.
Sure, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, Ron and I have 2 children, and we're so incredibly proud of both of them. Our daughter Wilson has always been, a very hard worker. She's always, in her mind, decided that she wanted to be a doctor, and has just last weekend completed that quest. She graduated from medical school at UMMC and is planning on staying in Jackson to do a residency in internal medicine. So yes, very, very proud of her achievements, accomplishments. One of the cool things about Wilson's graduation, though, was she was inducted into something called the Gold Humanism Society. And the Gold Humanism Society are not necessarily grade based, although you couldn't obviously be doing poorly grade wise, but your classmates actually voted on who got in gold humanism. And the way Wilson, they didn't have this when I was in med school, by the way, but the way Wilson described it was, if you had to pick a doctor that you would take your family member to see, who would it be? And so was really proud of her. I think maybe 20 people were inducted into this society, and she was one of them. And that was a big accomplishment, but she is that person. She is one of the kindest people I've ever met, and really proud of that accomplishment for her. And then Ted, our son, just graduated from Ole Miss. He got a degree in integrated marketing and communications and is now working on his master's degree. Most of those kids get their jobs through internships that the school places them in. And obviously there were no internships this year because of COVID. So he has decided to just continue with his education and should be done in the next 12 months or so. And when things start opening up, getting internships that, like I told him, you're going to be coming from a very unique perspective versus all these other kids graduating from college. You're going to have this extra degree that I think, will be important for you. So he's doing very well. He's got a 4.0 in his graduate program so far. So we'll just keep him on the right path, and maybe someday we'll get him all raised up and off of the payroll.
That's the goal. That's the goal. Well, thanks be to God. You've got to be proud, you and Ron both. We're grateful, Shaun, for your time. Dr. Shaun Helmhout, again, for our listeners, you have been an excellent guest for us to wrap up our first season, our 7th episode. Thank you again, and we'll be back in the fall with season 2. Blessings to you, Shaun. Prayers for your family, and all the best.
Thank you so much. And I'm flattered to be included in this. And I'm just so excited about the coming years at St. Peter's, because I think we have a lot of great things about to happen.
Yeah,
yep.
I agree. My garage door just opened and my family just got home. So I can tell you right now, this podcast is over.
Bye-bye.
Y'all have a great night. Thanks, Shaun.
Yeah, bye-bye.
See ya. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Leave us a comment, drop us a line, subscribe, and share with your friends.
If there are topics or guests you'd like us to consider, please let us know.
Thank you for tuning in to On This Rock for the building up of the church.